Putting aside fine phrases, we shall speak of the significance of each thought. By comparisons and deductions we shall throw light upon surrounding facts. What I am about to set forth, then, is a system from 2 points of view. It is written from that which is, quote-unquote, ourselves, that of the Anunnaki Reptilian Illuminati, and also that of what is termed the Goyim, or remaining humans. It must be noted that men with bad instincts are more in number than the good, and therefore the best results in governing them are attained by violence and terrorization, and not by academic discussions. Every man aims at power. Everyone would like to become a dictator if only he could, and rare indeed are the men who would not be willing to sacrifice the welfare of all for the sake of securing their own welfare. What has restrained the beasts of prey who are called men? What has served for their guidance hitherto? In the beginnings of the structure of society, they were subjected to brutal and blind force. Afterwards, to law, which is the same force, only disguised. I draw the conclusion that by the law of nature, right lies in force. Political freedom is an idea, but not a fact. This idea one must know how to apply whenever it appears necessary, with this bait of an idea to attract the masses of the people to one's party for the purpose of crushing another who is in authority. This task is rendered easier if the opponent has himself been infected with the idea of freedom, so-called liberalism, and for the sake of an idea is willing to yield some of his power. It is precisely here that the triumph of our theory appears. The slackened reins of government are immediately, by the law of life, caught up and gathered together by a new hand, because the blind might of the nation cannot, for one single day, exist without guidance, and the new authority merely fits into place of the old, already weakened by liberalism. In our day, the power, which has replaced that of the rulers, who were liberal, is the power of gold. Time was when faith ruled. The idea of freedom is impossible of realization because no one knows how to use it with moderation. It is enough to hand over a people to self-government for a certain length of time, for that people to be turned into a disorganized mob. From that moment on, we get strife, which soon develops into battles. Battles between classes, in the midst of which states burn down and their importance is reduced to that of a heap of ashes. Whether a state exhausts itself in its own convulsions, whether its internal discord brings it under the power of external foes, in any case, it can be accounted irretrievably lost. It is in our power. Should anyone of a liberal mind say that such reflections as what I have mentioned are immoral, I would put forth the following questions. If every state has two foes, and if in regard to the external foe it is allowed and not considered immoral to use every manner and art of conflict, as for example to keep the enemy in ignorance of plans of attack and defense, to attack him by night or in superior numbers, then in what way can the same means in regard to a worse foe, the destroyer of the structure of society and the commonwealth, be called immoral and not permissible? Is it possible for any sound logical mind to hope with any success to guide crowds by the aid of reasonable counsels and arguments, when any objection or contradiction, senseless though it may be, can be made, and when such objection may find more favor with the people whose powers of reasoning are superficial? Men in masses, and the men of the masses, being guided solely by petty passions, paltry beliefs, customs, traditions, and sentimental theorisms, fall a prey to party dissension, which hinders any kind of agreement, even on the basis of a perfectly reasonable argument. Every resolution of a crowd depends upon a chance of packed majority, which, in its ignorance of political secrets, put forth some ridiculous resolution that lays in the administration a seed of anarchy. The political has nothing in common with the moral. The ruler who is governed by the moral is not a skilled politician, and is therefore unable and unstable to hold his throne. He who wishes to rule must have resource both to cunning and to make believe. Great national qualities like frankness and honesty are vices in politics, for they bring down rulers from their thrones more effectively and more certainly than the most powerful enemy. Such qualities must be the attributes of the kingdoms of the humans, but we must be in no wise be guided by them. Our right lies in force. The word right is an abstract thought improved by nothing. The word means no more than, give me what I want, in order that thereby I may have a proof that I am stronger than you. Where does right begin? Where does it end? In any state in which there is a bad organization of authority, an impersonality of laws, and of the rulers who have lost their personality amid the flood of rights, ever multiplying, I find a new right, to attack by the right of the strong, and to scatter to the winds all existing forces of order and regulation, to reconstruct all institutions, and to become the sovereign lord of those who have left to us the rights of their power, by laying them down voluntarily. Our power is the present tottering condition of all forms of power, which will be more invisible than any other, because it will remain invisible until the moment when it has gained such strength that no cunning can any longer undermine it. Out of the temporary evil we are now compelled to commit will emerge the good of an unshakable rule, which will restore the regular course of the machinery of the national life, brought to naught by miserable liberalism. The result justifies the means. Let us, however, in our plans direct our attention not so much to what is good and moral as to what is necessary and useful. Before us is a plan, in which is laid down strategically the line from which we cannot deviate without running the risk of seeing the labor of many centuries brought to naught. In order to elaborate satisfactory forms of action, it is necessary to have regard to the rascality, the slackness, the instability of the mob, its lack of capacity to understand and respect the conditions of its own life or its own welfare. It must be understood that the might of a mob is blind, senseless, and unreasoning force ever at the mercy of a suggestion from any side. The blind cannot lead the blind without bringing them into the abyss. Consequently, members of the mob, upstarts from the people, even though they should be as a genius for wisdom, have no understanding of the political, cannot come forward as leaders of the mob without bringing the whole nation to ruin. Only one trained from childhood for independent rule can have understanding of the words that can be made up of this political alphabet. A people left to itself, for example, to upstarts from its midst, bring itself to ruin by party dissensions excited by the pure pursuit of powers and honor, and the disorders arising therefrom. Is it possible for the masses of the people calmly and without petty jealousies to form judgments, to deal with the affairs of the country, which cannot be mixed up with the personal interests? Can they defend themselves from an external foe? It is unthinkable for a plan broken up into as many parts as there are heads in the mob, and thereby becomes unintelligible and impossible of execution. It is only with a despotic ruler that plans can be elaborated extensively and clearly, in such a way as to distribute the whole properly among the several parts of the machinery of the state. From this, the conclusion is inevitable that a satisfactory form of government for any country is one that concentrates in the hands of one reasonable person, one responsible one. Without an absolute despotism, there can be no existence for civilization, which is carried on not by the masses,